Hey, can you hear me all right?
I can. Good morning, AJ. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Hey,
Good.
thank you for taking the time to join me this morning.
Not at all. I appreciate it. Thanks
Oh,
for having me.
absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you as well. Before we dive in today, though, I wanted to kind of give our audience some information on you and what your role is here at Purdue.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So my name is AJ Frigo. My official title is the Senior Assistant Director of Admission for Indiana Relations. So my job focuses on all aspects of recruitment and understanding secondary and post-secondary education in the state of Indiana, which is obviously super important considering we're a land-grant institution in the state of Indiana. So I grew up in Monon, Indiana. So, excuse me, about 45 minutes north of Purdue University in the middle of a cornfield, I like to say. Went to St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana, before they closed down. And then I got my master's degree through Purdue University Global, and I've been in this role in admissions for about 6 years now.
Okay, so you're pretty well rounded. You've got some pretty good background.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, as the undergrad recruiter for agronomy, I meet with a lot of prospective students and their parents, and I do know that applying to college can be stressful experience, especially when students have to start kind of really considering kind of balancing homework and extracurricular activities along with the college application and the essay process. And I know one of the main topics of conversation when meeting with prospective students is the application process.
Yeah,
And I think we can all agree that it can be grueling, to say the least.
absolutely.
So with that, I want to kind of dive into a couple questions here that always seem to arise when I am meeting with prospective students and their parents. And one is, what are the first steps someone should take when deciding to apply to a college?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think everybody needs to approach this conversation as if they know absolutely nothing, right? So I think
Sure.
that's a really important piece to start at. Start completely fresh. That you really don't know what's available to you, and truly you don't. I always talk about my university that I went to had 32 majors, and I remember when they said, "What major do you want?" I was like, "How could you possibly pick between 32 majors? That's so many." Well, then you go
Sure.
somewhere like Purdue University, and you got 230 majors, right? So it's even more overwhelming. And so a lot of the times you're not going to have the high school curriculum to teach you what you can do for the rest of your life. You don't even know all the job titles in the world. So I would start with, okay, what do I like? What do I dislike? And then the very best next step is to reach out to individuals like you and I and to say, well, this is what I like. Would this incorporate that? This is what I see myself doing for the future. Would this incorporate that? So you really have to start making a list of your likes and dislikes. So that's kind of step one of a very holistic process, is step all the way back and look at it from 10,000 feet in the air. What even can you do in the world, right? Then
Sure.
the next step would probably be, and I always tell this to everyone, write down what the best fit for you is. And this can sound a little cheesy, but you have to find your right fit. And what that looks like, I normally break that into three sections. There's an academic fit, a
Mhm.
social fit, and a financial fit. Right? Those are three key pieces that you need to write down. And this will really help you narrow down your college search. There's 5,000 universities in the US. How do you narrow that down? Well, one, the academic fit, right? Are you able to do the work at this university? Is that university, does it have the major that you're interested in? Does it have the area of expertise that you want to go into? Does it perhaps have a master's or PhD program that you may desire later on? So, what's that academic fit for you? The social fit, right? Do you want a large campus, a small campus? Do you want a medium sized campus? Do you want a Big Ten football atmosphere? Do you want a small school, everyone knows everyone type feel? How far do you want to walk to class on a regular basis? What do you want the weather to be like? That social fit is so important. What kind of diversity do you want on your campus? And then finally, the financial fit, right? How much is it going to cost to go to that university? Do they award scholarships? Do they not award scholarships? Do they have financial aid? Is it desirable for you to go there? Do they have support services for you to help understand those things, especially if you're a first generation college student? Those are the most important pieces. And so, big fit there overall. First step, ask a lot of questions, 2,
Mhm.
find your right fit academically, socially, and financially. And then number 3 is, and I can't stress this enough, I'll probably say it a bunch more times, call admissions and talk to them. Our job is to talk to you and to help you find your right fit. So call us and talk with us. I think those are the big 3 pieces you should start with.
Well, I think that's some great advice as well, because there are so many, I have a background of working in a high school in the guidance office for 21 years. And you have so many students that they want to go to college. They have some form of interest in, A, B, and C. However, they don't know how to narrow down exactly what area of study that they do want to start, pursuing. And so I think using those tools that you just described really kind of helps a student narrow down, okay, these are my likes, these are my dislikes, and now let's push forward with some of the things that I really enjoy doing and try to make a career, focus out of that, and then choosing the college and the department or degree area that is going to, put you where you want to be in your
Yeah.
future.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I think that's great. So are there different academic requirements for admissions, like depending on the department or the major you choose?
So for each university, it's going to be a little bit different, obviously, right? And that's again where you called that admissions office. But from a Purdue University standpoint, it's for the most part going to be there's minimum high school course expectations. You have to meet this. And so
Mhm.
from a Purdue standpoint, you need 8 semesters of high school math, 8 semesters of high school English, 6 semesters of lab science, 6 semesters of social science, and 4 semesters of foreign language. So these are our minimum requirements that all programs have to meet. But a really important component when we're evaluating an application is, are you academically prepared to succeed in your desired program? And
Mhm.
so what that generally means, and a great example is, let's say a student is really, really interested in chemistry. They love chemistry. They love their high school chemistry. Well, if they're applying to us and they don't have a lot of math, they didn't do a lot of advanced math, and they didn't do a lot of chemistry, it's going to be really hard for us to determine if they can be successful or not. Because as you probably know, but other students may not, or other individuals may not, our chemistry program requires a few years of calculus, a few calculus
Mhm.
courses, and a lot of advanced chemistry. So it's really that simplistic process of, well, what major am I interested in? Well, what courses does that major take that I need to prepare myself for in order to be successful? And
Mhm.
ag is a great example of that, because when for the past 6 years, whenever I talk to a student who's talking about agriculture, they traditionally say, oh yeah, well, I don't really need a lot of math because it's just agriculture. But
Mhm.
as you know, it's a very STEM based program. It's very STEM heavy. So even
Right.
programs you wouldn't think were heavy in calculus, like
Mhm.
agribusiness, requires applied calculus 1 and 2 in most scenarios. Agronomy is another example of that. You're going to need to be able to do that advanced mathematics. So it's a really
Correct.
important component. So I always say start with that admissions office, look up the plan of study. So in general, going back, 4 years of math, 4 years of English, 3 years of lab science, 3 years of social science, 2 years of foreign language. And then, as you know, obviously additional, like what you could take based on the major you're interested in.
Mhm. Now, does admissions field any calls from high school students, kind of calling in and saying, okay, hey, look, this is kind of what I'm looking at. This is my schedule for, my junior year and my senior year. Should I be taking X, Y, and Z in math as opposed to what I'm scheduled for? I mean, is that something admissions can kind of guide them a little bit? So when they are entering into their senior year, they already kind of have that degree plan ready. So when they do apply, they're kind of on the right path.
Absolutely. So that you mentioned, you've been in secondary school counseling or school
Mhm.
counseling in general. A school counselor wears so many different hats, and so they do so many incredible things. The word counselor obviously can be misconstrued. When you talk about an admissions counselor,
Mhm.
my job is to counsel students, any student that calls in or walks in or speaks to me, how to get admitted. I say this too often. I'm not a deny counselor. I am an
Mhm.
admissions counselor. So if somebody reaches out to me, I'm going to counsel you one-on-one of how to get admitted to the major of your choice. And if you're not ready right now, we could talk about transfer options. We could talk about going to another university and starting there. We could talk about our Pathway to Purdue program for agriculture specifically. We could talk about, hey, you're only in eighth grade. Well, here's what you should be taking to get on this projection to get admitted. And I always say a vast majority of the time, for I would say 80% of our students applying to Purdue, your admissions decision should not be a surprise. You know,
Hmm.
you should have already had these conversations with admissions where I can tell you, oh yeah, that's great. You've taken pre-calculus with an A and you're currently enrolled in calculus and you have great STEM courses, good grades there, and you want to go into an agronomy major.
Hmm.
I absolutely think you'd be competitive, right? That it's normally that simple. I think you'll be competitive. There are some tricky programs, obviously, like computer science, flight, nursing. Those are the programs that have space limitations. So we can always talk about that later on. But I'd say for 80% of the students that apply to Purdue, you should pretty much know what your decision is going to be because you've been counseled on how to get admitted.
Correct, correct. Well, and you just mentioned pathways. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on what that is and what that option is for students coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Pathway to Purdue program is a decade old, and it's actually the full title is Pathway to Purdue Agriculture. And so the Pathway program is something I help run in the admissions office where we created a partnership about 10 years ago with Ivy Tech Lafayette. It's only about 8 miles from Purdue University West Lafayette's campus. Students were really interested in coming to Purdue for agriculture. And I think too often they were not meeting what we were just talking about, not having that advanced math coursework, not doing well in school prior to. And a lot of these students didn't know college was for them. They weren't prepared for it. And then maybe junior or senior year, they were like, oh, wow, I got to buckle down. But by then they had not performed well enough to be admitted into the program. And so what we did is we created a program where you can be enrolled at Ivy Tech Lafayette and Purdue University at the exact same time. There's guaranteed admissions protocol where essentially you're going to take all your ag classes at Purdue and you're going to take all your core or general education courses at Ivy Tech Lafayette. And after 2 years, if you meet basically a 2.5 cumulative GPA, you're guaranteed to finish your associate's degree at Ivy Tech in agriculture and then come over to Purdue and finish your last 2 years to get your bachelor's degree in agriculture. So this program is great because you actually get to live on Purdue's campus for those 2 years. You get all the rights and responsibilities of a Purdue University student. You can get tickets to the games. You can, you live in a specific Pathway to Purdue learning community. So it's a really great tool for students who maybe started a little bit late or
Mhm.
they weren't necessarily sure what they wanted to do, or they're just looking for another option that's a little bit different for them. You're going to generally get smaller class sizes, a little bit more counseling. And on top of that, you actually pay Ivy Tech tuition and fees. So it's a little bit more affordable than going to Purdue.
That's great. And to have that option, again, students, come in with the idea of, oh, well, I didn't quite make the cut this time around, so I guess I'm just not going to do it. And having these options available to them not only helps them academically, but also helps them financially. I think that's a great outlet for them as well, should they, go that route. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
What resources are available on campus if a student, say, needs help with classes? Any of the courses they're taking and they may be struggling or having a more difficult time adapting to those courses? Are there resources available for those students?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a really important piece of, when I was looking at colleges and universities, I didn't even consider Purdue really. I thought it was too big or even I didn't really know much about it or what it had to offer or how truly
Mhm.
good of a school it was. So I wasn't really sure because I grew up in a small town, a lot of first generation college students. So I didn't really know. But I think the important thing to consider, the larger a university, the larger its resources. And I can't really
Mhm.
stress that enough that Purdue University has literally every resource in the world available to you. And that's in any avenue you could possibly think of. So if you have a student, struggling or worried about their classes, well, right off the bat, an important thing is, do you need accommodations? Have you had an IEP or a 504 plan in high school or
Mhm.
just so we have an entire disability resource center to give you accommodations on tests, exam, hearing, hard of hearing, poor sight. I mean, the list goes on. Anything you may need additional resources on, we have an entire center devoted to that. The next piece would be, academic counseling. We have so many free tutoring opportunities, and some students also, as a side gig, will do paid tutoring opportunities. They'll say, hey, I passed this class with an A, come and see me. And that's a great resource for students. But from a Purdue University overall standpoint, from our Academic Success Center, we offer peer tutoring, recitation, supplemental instruction, office hours with your professor. These are all free resources for you to get involved and immersed in, to where you can get smaller class sizes, more pointed details on the curriculum you're going through. Essentially, I always just say, any resource you can imagine, we absolutely have it at Purdue.
And who does the student contact to find these resources?
Yeah, so I would say there's kind of a two-way street here. One, your academic advisor is kind of going to be your partner through these next 4 years, right? Your academic advisor is going to have so many great resources and so much know-how of the university and how things work and contact information. So that's part one. But otherwise, our BGR, or our orientation program, Boiler Gold Rush, where all freshmen can attend if they want to, that week before classes start, we have team leaders that's going to basically show you everything about our campus, right? They're going to teach you about the Academic Success Center, show you where certain libraries are, where buildings may be, where your classes are, where the secret tunnels on our campus are. That's
Sure.
our orientation program. So I would say your academic advisor is going to be a great resource. And then on top of that, your peer leaders that you talk with, and then also our Young Hall is an entire, 8-story building filled with all these things. So
Right.
that building would be another great example of just, hey, walk in here. What do you need? We'll help you.
Right. That's great. That's great. How can a student make their application stand out?
Yeah, this is a question I get from every single student I've ever talked to for 6 years, right?
I get it all the time too.
Yeah. How do I stand out, right? And so I think the really important key that we talked about earlier, that when we're evaluating an application, in admissions, we evaluate applications individually and holistically. So that means we're looking at you only. We're not pulling up 2 applications from the same school and comparing you to your friend or your valedictorian. We're looking at you holistically by saying, what's everything you put into this application? Every single piece of the puzzle. And so some of those things we're going to be talking about, obviously the application, the Purdue specific essays you fill out, your grades, if you have test scores, what those look like. We're also going to be looking at those minimum high school course requirements, those essays we're going to be looking through, high school course expectations, academic coursework. And I'm going to keep going with this list just so they know that everything is important. The grades, grades related to your intended major, the strength of your overall high school curriculum, the academic trends in your achievement, the grades in your core academic coursework, ability to be successful in your intended major, personal background and experiences, information your high school provides, time of the year that you apply, space availability in your desired program. I mean, the list goes on. That's only a smidge of what we're looking at, right? So with all those pieces individually and holistically, we're ultimately trying to decide, are you academically prepared to succeed in your desired academic program? 1, and then 2, are you a competitive candidate in the context of the overall pool of applicants based on the program's available space? Right. So those are the 2 things we're looking at. Of everything you can put in, we're looking at, hey, can you do the work here? 2, are you competitive in the pool? And so again, this is something we already talked about. The pool is generally not an issue for almost all of our majors, right? The programs that have space limitations will always have a more candid conversation with that. Hey, computer science, there's only this many spots. Hey, flight, there's only this many airplanes on our campus.
Right.
But for a vast majority of our programs, can you do the work is the main thing we're looking for. So for standing out, truly, it's just being thorough. I mean, thoroughness is so undervalued in the application. And what I tend to find, and you can probably attest to this, the best students, the best people, these best students are traditionally the most humble and the most and unfortunately, that's generally not a great thing when you're applying to a university.
Well, and to kind of piggyback off of that, I again, coming from working with high school students for as long as I did, it's all about, just telling your story, just being real, being honest, and making yourself stand out, because you are different from your friend. You are different from the next guy. So, everybody has different qualifications, different characteristics, different personalities. And so just be yourself, make those stand out. in your application.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Being genuine is so important. And I probably read around 3,000 applications during the fall.
uh,
And when I'm looking at all these applications, I can it within almost seconds figure out who is genuine. And I know it
mhm,
sounds a little bit crazy, but after reading through so many over and over again, the personalized essays and the understanding of who you are and what you can bring to the table is so important. And so another thing I normally say to set students' minds at ease is that students actually have all the power in this relationship between colleagues
mhm.
and students. Students have all the power. If you don't apply to us, we're hurting, right? We
Right, right.
you. We 100% need you. So you get to
Mhm,
utilize us as free resources because we desire you in our
mhm.
programs. We desire you to make our campus better.
And I think it's a great relationship because we desire them, but in turn they, desire us, and so it creates a very solid foundation for a great relationship academically, personally, and so I think that's a benefit for all, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. So, I mean, just to get back to the core root of your question, how can I make
Mhm,
my application stand out? It's be thorough and be
mhm,
proud of your accomplishments. Be proud of what you did. I always say this, if you were interim chess club president for a week, be
mhm.
proud of that. Put it on the application. Talk
Right,
about that. That's a week that you were doing something other than going home and studying.
right.
So everything is important. And I think students think, oh, I wasn't in a sport, so it doesn't count.
Mhm,
Not at all. Clubs are important. FFA is important. I mean, 4-H is important. Everything you've done is important, including family responsibilities. If you have to take care of a younger sibling or a grandparent or a parent, you have to work to help provide money for your bills, to
mhm,
pay your car insurance or your cell phone bill. That's important stuff. That's very important stuff that students all too often leave out of their application.
mhm.
So just be thorough, be genuine, and tell us everything we need to know. And then that's what I always say, how you stand out.
Well, and kind of to follow up with that as well, which this is a biggie, and I know this is a big stressor for many students, is the weight of the essay, the writing the essay. I think they get so overwhelmed and they don't know what to do, what to say, how to write it. So, what kind of weight do you put on essays versus other admission factors?
Yeah. So I think a really important key piece of the admissions process, right? Every school does it a little bit differently, I would say. But from a Purdue standpoint, there's no graded rubric, right? So it's a really important thing. There's behind the curtain, I guess. We're not going through and looking at you and saying, oh, only 6 activities. So this student gets a 4 out of 10. And then we
Mm-hmm.
add up that number. And if you're above a 20, then we admit you. It doesn't work that way. Again, we're just looking to see, are you prepared to do the work? Are you a competitive candidate? And that's what we're looking at. And so
Mm-hmm.
the essay doesn't get more weight than another thing. But what I always tell students, with 55,000 applications coming into Purdue each year, I really wish I could interview and talk with all 55,000 of you. But as you know, that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be done. So the essay just lets me know more about who you are as an individual, your personality, your drive, your grit, your characteristics. And students ask me all the time, well, what's the context I should use? What essay topic should I write about?
Mm-hmm.
There's no right answer. On the Common App, there's 6 different essay prompts to choose from. I always say, write something that's genuine about you and leave us kind of wanting more, showing us that you're desiring more. And so normally the great ones are going to be personal triumphs or how you've become better as a result of X, Y, or Z. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you just tell us a random story, that's fine. I can see your writing skills are good. But if you tell
Right.
a random story that relates either to your major or who you are as an individual or Purdue University or your family life, and it shows us how you're going to be impactful and important, that's a really powerful essay. But go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say, and that's one thing that I always reiterate to students when they do ask that question is, again, write from the heart and get that feedback. That's, use your resources like your teachers, your guidance counselors, your friends, or somebody that really knows you, and get that feedback from the essay that you wrote. And I think that's just going to kind of give you a leg up also, just with the overall general story in your essay.
Yeah, absolutely. I generally say, when you finish your essay, have your best friend or your parent, someone who's really close to you, read it. And if it
Mhm.
doesn't sound like it's coming from your voice, then think about maybe restarting. Think about maybe editing it to make it sound like it's coming from you, like you're talking to the admissions rep reading your
Mhm.
file.
Correct. Right. Well, and here's another big thing that I have students ask me as well, and this is a concern for parents. And I know this on a personal level. I have a child that is very strong academic, not into any extracurricular activities. And then I have another child that is very athletic and then also very academic. And so, students and parents are always concerned, well, what is looked at as far as extracurricular versus admission factors? If I'm not involved in anything, but I have amazing grades and my SAT, ACT score, whatever, are off the charts, am I not going to be looked at as highly as not being or not participating in extracurricular activities? How does admissions look at that?
Yeah, so extracurricular activities are always a great one as well, just like the essay, right? It's not more important than another, but I think we kind of touched on this a little bit ago.
Hmm.
Every single extracurricular activity is important, right?
Hmm.
Every single thing that you do is valuable. So I always tell students, if you weren't sitting at home playing on your phone or, reading a book,
Uh-huh.
like a textbook for your school, you were
Right.
something, right? You were
Hmm.
doing something. And what does that look like to you? I have students who started recently putting video games is obviously really big. So students are putting, hey, I'm in esports, but I play with my friends. There's this club
Hmm.
where I play, X, Y, and Z. And this is the kind of hours it takes me to do. This is the dedication it takes for me. That's still important. It's showing that you're doing something. Same thing with, again, I cannot stress enough, family responsibilities.
Hmm.
You're taking care of a sibling or a parent, or hey, my parents both work until 5, so after school I have to bring my younger sibling home. I can't play sports because I'm doing this.
Right.
That's so important for us to know, because when students leave the extracurricular activities section of the common application blank,
Hmm.
I automatically assume that student is going to have perfect A pluses in every single course.
Hmm.
No activities, then that means all you're doing is studying and
Hmm.
taking the hardest rigor ever. And
Right.
that's traditionally never the case, right? Students are doing stuff. They're either one, unfortunately being lazy and not filling out the application thoroughly, or two, they don't have a resource to go to and know that this stuff is important. So that's why,
Right.
I mean, conversations like this are important, but also those students calling our office and talking with us so we can explain, oh yes, this is valuable. Please put it on your application.
Right, right. And I think it's imperative for students to know that just because they're not in a club or they're not, involved in any kind of athletics doesn't mean, like you just reiterated, doesn't mean that they're not involved in other things, whether they're working. I had a student that said, I'm not involved in anything. Here's my GPA. Here's the course load I'm taking. However, I am teaching myself to play guitar.
Yeah.
I do work. I like to work on my car, and so I'm like, those are things that again you are doing. It is showing that you have the determination and drive to participate in other things other than, like you had just indicated, just sitting, playing on your phone.
Yeah.
And so it's very imperative that they know you don't have to be, the president of the chess club, or you don't have to be the quarterback of the football team. There are so many things that go into extracurricular activities that make you you.
Yeah, and there are also, and this is normally the saddest conversations I have, excuse me, but there are also families that talk with me. Traditionally, the parents are a little over involved in the process, and they'll say, "Oh, well, Jimmy, he doesn't do football, he doesn't do any sports, so
Hmm.
I'm gonna force him to join tennis, so that way he'll get in."
Hmm.
Don't do
No.
that. Do not
Yeah.
do that. And so it's such a frustrating thing to hear. And I normally hear this as well when a student says, I'm really, really interested in pottery. I love pottery. It's such a great, I do it at home
Mhm.
and I have a pottery class I could take, but my school counselor or a friend told me, or my mom's friend told me I won't get into college if I do this passion project. That's never the case. We want you to do things that you are passionate about. And that ties back to those activities as well. If you love robotics club, do
Mhm.
robotics club, do it to the max, do it full, get fully involved, become the president. That's equally as important as Eagle Scouts, which is equally as important as Pottery Club, which is equally as important as being the quarterback of the football team, right? It's
Correct. Right.
all important.
Right. And I agree, I can't agree any more on that. That is 100% facts right there. So, and another thing that we address quite often too, if a student is doing poorly in high school classes, how do they address that on the application? It may not mean that they're academically a bad student. They may, struggle in some areas here and there, but that doesn't automatically, take them off the list as getting accepted into Purdue. So how is that addressed on the application process if they are doing poorly in one class here or there, or their grade wasn't, up to par?
Yeah. So this is another great one that's all too often missed by students. In the application, in the Common App, there's a specific section called additional information, and
Mm-hmm.
you can fill it with anything additional that you didn't think fit into the rest of the application. Now, because of the global pandemic, there's also another section called community disruption. So
Okay.
there's two separate sections on the common application to tell us these things, and I can't stress enough how valuable it is. We'll see all the time where a student will have straight A's and B's, and then just one semester, junior year, first semester, they have straight C's
Mm-hmm.
or maybe D's and F's, and it's why, and they don't tell us anything. That
Uh-huh.
student may end up getting denied because of a poor academic trend. Maybe they didn't tell us what was going on, or we were concerned. And then when that student calls in and says, "Oh, I just want to know why I was denied," maybe I'll bring up, "Hey, yeah, junior year, this looked really rocky." They say,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, well, my parents had a divorce. I lost my grandparent. I had to
Mm-hmm.
work 3 jobs. There was a global pandemic, so I had to go virtual learning. I have poor internet access at home." The list goes on, right? There's so
Mm-hmm.
many things that can affect a student and their grades that, again, it's really, really hard to say this because we want students to be modest and humble, but you have to really explain everything to us as an admissions counselor because there's no computer system. We
Mm-hmm.
can't empathize or sympathize with your situation unless you tell us. So
Right.
in the application, that additional information section and community disruption section is free reign to tell us how anything affected you, right? Anything
Mm-hmm.
at all. And this goes even, like I said, divorce, a death in the family, you had to switch high schools, you had to move across the state or across the country, a global pandemic affected you, virtual learning was tough. The list goes on. Anything you can possibly think of is important.
Sure. So, to kind of follow up on that, really just being honest, being 100% transparent, I think really can kind of help the student in that admission process,
No, absolutely. Yeah,
because we can't read minds, right? we
yeah.
And so all you have is the application in front of you. So if there's things blank, but yet you're noticing, yeah, there was a dip in grades here and there, we don't know if there was a personal issue going on at the time, what was happening, and so yeah, just being 100% transparent, I think, is the key here.
Yeah, and the best thing you can do is tell us again, because if you don't tell us anything at all,
Mhm.
we just have to leave it up to our imagination.
Right.
That student didn't care junior year. That's it. Or sophomore
Right.
year, they clearly didn't care that semester. That's like
Right.
99% of the time never the case. We're just not informed.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and with all of that, just kind of to wrap everything back up here in a ball, and I know we've highlighted all of these, but just to reiterate, what are the most desirable qualities Purdue looks at in an applicant?
Yeah, so I mean, we touched on that massive list of things that we evaluate you
Mhm.
on, but truly, there's no secret sauce. It's not like, hey, if you write this keyword, you'll get in. It's always going to be, can you be successful in your intended program? Can you be successful in this major? And then on top of that, things that are important to us, we do have those essays, but we also have the two Purdue essays, and it's why Purdue and why this major. And those are
Mhm.
really, really important pieces for us to know that you care, that you're interested, that you want to be here, that it's desirable. And it also helps us glean a little bit more into kind of what makes you tick. So
Mhm.
desirable qualities. I think if I have talking to an eighth grader or a ninth grader, I'd say get good grades, take as
Mhm.
many tough courses as you can while still being happy, and still following your passions, but get good grades, and you're going to be doing the core root of what we need from you. And then on top of that, show us you care about Purdue University in those essay sections, so that you truly maybe researched your interests or goals within Purdue University. And then ultimately, it's just getting that application in on time. I
Mhm.
can't stress that enough. You can start applying August 1st, your senior year, and you should absolutely apply by November 1st of your senior year. It's just so important that you do that. So if you're getting good grades, applying on time, again, your admissions decision should rarely be a surprise to you.
Right. And to follow up with all that, it is an absolute blessing, I think, to have all the tools and resources for students that they can use to guide them through this entire process.
Yeah, absolutely. There's unlimited resources. Your school counselors do so many different things, but without a doubt, if you ask them, they'll help you. And on top of that, you have college counselors all over the place. Not to mention, if
Mm-hmm.
you have any siblings or grandparents or family friends or parents that went through the college process, they may have some ideas on what to do. Your best friends. The list goes on. There's so many people willing to help you. And I've worked with the College of Agriculture for about 4 years now, reading the agriculture applications. I can't stress enough that I have not yet found one person working for the College of Agriculture, regardless of their position, that
Mm-hmm.
enjoys and desires helping students along this process. And so it's
Right.
absolutely crazy that you can find a staff of hundreds. You talk to any of them, and they're going to be overjoyed to help get you on your way.
And that's the one thing too that I reiterate and stress with prospective students that are interested in agronomy is we have um, one of the most amazing group of faculty and staff, and with agronomy it's small enough to where we know a lot of our, if not all of our students, and on a first name basis, and everybody, I don't care if it's a staff member, a faculty member, if it is our academic advisor. If you're walking in the hallway, we're always like, hey, John, how are you today? You need any help? Is there anything we can assist you with? So just having those resources actually available there too to provide that guidance to students, I think is amazing. And I think the College of Ag as a whole is so good about that.
Yeah, 100%. I cannot attest to that enough.
Well, I wanted to thank you for personally just taking your time today and going over some of these questions that students and their parents have. By providing such information, I think that we can turn kind of a laborious task into a meaningful and more positive experience for students. So thank you, AJ. I greatly appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it's not a problem at all. I can't stress enough to reach out to us. Their higher education employees are just begging to speak with you. We need you. We want to tell you about our programs. We want to tell you about our insights. And it's so valuable, regardless of where you're coming from, whether you're a first generation college student or whether you have 10 generations of Purdue alumni in your family, we can still offer you some kind of input or value. So I can't stress enough that you should reach out to us. We would love to speak with you and help you through this process.
Great. Thank you, AJ.
Yeah, it's not a problem at all.
Have a great rest of your week, and August is approaching.
August 1st is coming up. So start thinking about getting that application ready to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.